All right. Everybody getting handouts that need them in the back, and they're being passed around, and plenty of things to read about and that we'll discuss here as we go on for you this morning. First of all, good morning. Welcome to the 43rd Color Lab Convention here in Norfolk, Virginia. This is, I think, the 19th, is it? It's the 21st. I've missed a couple of days out, and I think so. So, yes, this is Monday morning, and it is the 21st of March, 2016. My name is Tim Mariner, and I'll be your moderator and panelist for this session. The name of this session is Rethink Your Singers, Rethinking Singers. And we have the privilege of having a past chairman with us, a milestone recipient, and one of the recipient, and also one of the individuals that's a part of the Last Man Standing game that we play every year. Be here for the last 40. Nice hand for Mr. John Jones. Okay, so we're going to treat this kind of as a discussion. If you have questions, please, at any time you have a question, raise a hand and tell us who you are and where you're from, and then ask the question. If you have a comment, could you defer those towards the end? We'll have comments at the end, but if you have questions while we're discussing this, we certainly want to approach those questions right while we're discussing the items. And so to kind of get things going, I believe when we were discussing this before, we've each had scenarios or situations where you've gone to a convention or somebody comes back from a convention, you say, hey, how'd it go? And they come up to you and they say, the dancers will say, it was awful. And you say, well, why was it awful? Well, we couldn't dance. We say, well, why couldn't you dance? Well, because the caller was up there standing there reading their sheets, and nobody on the floor was able to keep up or dance. And it really is puzzling that we train callers to sing to the music, but we've forgotten that callers also have to call to the music, to the dancers. They have to call to the dancers as well as use the music. And it's one of those scenarios where we have to get back to watching dancers. And that doesn't mean holding a cue sheet up right in front of you and just read the word verbatim and let them suffer. If they don't get through the first sequence of a singing call, you have to modify it. If you don't have the means to modify it, then we're in trouble. And we have to get back to knowing how to do that. How do we modify our singers to allow the dancers to win? If they're all standing out on the floor, they're not having a good time. You've not given them the chance to have it. It's just not going to happen. So it's the situation of being able to modify this on the fly, and what's necessary. And what are the things that you have to sometimes modify for? The program of the dance, the tempo or the ability of the dancers in front of you to be able to do those things. I've been to conventions where I've emceed events, and they said, you realize this is a plus tip that you're doing. And the caller rushed back. I said, where are you going? They said, I don't have a plus record. And you scratch your head wondering, really? And so they have to be able to adapt to what is going on in the environment of the room and the people and their abilities and all of those things. So this is why we're here, to try to get back to thinking how to do that. And so for that to kind of get started, I'm going to kick it off to John, who'll kind of get things rolling. And again, if you have questions, please ask a question. If you have a comment, save it for later because we don't want to take too much time. We've got a lot of material to go through, okay? All right, Mr. John Jones.
Thank you. Howdy. And our moderator this morning, well-known caller, been chairman of the board of Caller Lab on 2 different occasions, and an accredited caller coach, recording artist. Would you please welcome Tim Mariner? and he was talking about callers reading their sheets. And in our caller school, we'll give them 1 day to do that if that's what they get up and do. And by tomorrow, you can't have that sheet. And they look at me so funny, like, you got to be kidding me. And on occasions, I've had callers that went and picked up their sheet anyway, and the second day, and started doing their singing call, and I just walk by and take it out of their hand. You can't have that. And so you have to learn the singing calls. It's okay to have notes. We all have notes. I got a packet of notes that I carry all the time. And especially now, because I don't call near as much as I used to. And that's okay. And I expected that. The older we get, the less we get booked. And Deborah gets booked a lot more than I do, and I'm fine with that. And I have changed my name from a square dance caller to a caller hauler. I haul my caller around, and she makes the money, and I take it home. And so, but that's okay. And we work together good, and we enjoy working together, and I help her with her class and do a little bit with her club. And I don't have a club anymore, but I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I do what I want to, and I don't do what I don't want to. And it becomes just that really simple. And no photos, please. Just kidding. But speaking of a sheet, do you know where Mexican ghosts keep their sheets? In the sheet house.
Rethink that one.
That's on the recording. Yeah. Now, did you pick up, did everybody get the handouts that were back at the back and the one that we passed out of Tim's? Okay. And the one that we have, that I have, it has my name on it, Singing Call Adaptation, and the title of Tim's is exactly the same. And so if you see on there, when I won't start working on a new singing call or one that I don't know, or trying to figure out if a routine or a figure or a module will work, that it's just automatic for me to use this tune of Just Because it's so easy to do, and things fit really well in doing that. And if I can get it to fit the tune of Just Because, then I can use it with practically any other piece of music, because very seldom do we have anything that's not in segments of 64 beats. Now, did you look at the singing call breakdown that I put out? I may be the only one that has ever done this with a piece of music to figure out what to do or what not to do, or what can we do with that piece of music. And if you look down there at the next to the last paragraph, it leaves 182 beats, or 41% of the music, to do a figure or a module. Had any of you ever thought of that before? Had it ever crossed anybody's mind exactly how much time you had in the percentage-wise of the piece of music that you were using to use a module or a figure that you might want to use? I have heard callers say that they sight call singing call figures. I personally would even think about doing that. If I don't know that sucker or have a module in my mind, I'm not going to stand up there and just regurgitate calls and hope I can get the thing to work out after a while. Because 9 times out of 10, we're going to be run over, and you give the dancers about 4 beats to promenade all the way around the ring. How many does it take? Can anybody tell me? 16 to promenade all the way around. If they can do it in less, good luck. You got some young dancers on your floor. And so these types of things, and if you look down there in the singing call adaptation paper that I wrote on the first page, I've written out how many beats or how many dancing steps it takes to do each one of the calls that I have written out there. I suspect that most of you have never seen that before on a singing call. When I first learned to call, even the patter calls that we got, that we passed around from caller to caller, had written out beside it how many beats and how many dancing steps it took to do every line that we had. and even the fill-in words that went along with it. And then, please turn the light off. The reason being is this light right here is flashing like a disco thing and drive you crazy. I'd just soon have these spotlights turned off if we could, but I don't know where the switch is. There's a rheostat thing right there in that, recessed in that wall that may work because it's real bright in our eyes up here.
Yeah, you got the natural lighting.
We've got outside lighting and everything. Oh, thank you very much. That made a whole lot of difference. Thank you. Now, you need to break down the modules of your singing calls if you're writing something different. Most of the ones that we get that callers have already recorded, they've worked it out somewhere. And most of them work pretty good. Some of them don't. You have to be able to know which ones do and which ones don't work out for you. How many of you write your own singing call figures? Anybody? Very good. The rest of you, do you simply use what's on the recording? Is that what you're telling me? Well, then if you don't use that, but you didn't hold up your hand that you write figures.
Somebody else wrote it. They just stole it.
I'm sorry?
I just started 6 months ago.
You just started 6 months ago. The only thing you've been trained to do is do what's on the recording sheet or the cue sheet that you probably get. You steal from other sources? Other songs? We call it research. Yeah. But we do it deliberately. Research anything that you can get that works good.
And
Yes.
I started using the songs and the caller.
Wait, we're going to have to use the microphone, please.
I started using the songs. I'm also brand new, a couple of months, and the caller that I'm working with basically rewrites it because he says this is not working for what I'm doing. So I've been using his modifications of it in order to make it happen.
What's your name?
I'm Sharon
Just
Trimble from Pennsylvania.
All right. Thank you, Sharon. And that's good for you've been calling only 2 months or a few months.
I started at the caller school in October at Ken Ratucci's last October.
Okay, y'all went to the same school together. Okay, good. As long as you don't copy Ken Ratucci, you'll be okay. Yeah. Now, he's going to hear that, and I know it, and he's a good friend of mine. I wouldn't say things about people I don't like, except Tim.
I can handle it.
Breaking down your singing call, learn what you're doing. Don't just guess at it. If you don't know, go ask a caller that's been in the business for a while. Help me. Don't ever be afraid to go ask somebody to help you. I've never known a caller that would turn people down and that came and asked for help. I have had some new callers turn me down that I offered my help. I had one at one time. He had a beautiful voice, but he couldn't stay on rhythm with the music. And I told him, I said, I'll give you private lessons in my home to help you do that. And he said, no, I don't need your help. I said, okay. He lasted about 6 months, and then he was gone because nobody wanted to dance to him because it was horrible. So that can happen. Now, how many of you been to conventions in the last 4 years? Our Caller Lab convention. Okay. If you've stayed for the business meeting, you've heard me make a report about singing call figures. I'm going to make another one this year, but it may be my last one because I'm about to decide that I'm the only one that really cares. Now, what I'm talking about is the overuse of the beginning call, square through, or promenade half. And it's gotten a little bit better since I first started this 5 years ago. But it ain't as good as it needs to be, in my opinion. I called a dance the other night, and after I got home, I analyzed my calling. I used the beginning figure square through on a singing call one time, and I used heads promenade half one time on a singing call. The rest of the time, I made darn sure it was something different, and every one of them were different. And this list of singing call figures that I gave you right here, I promise you every one of them will work, and I don't know that there's a square through or a promenade half on any one. I don't think there is. I think I wrote them all where they were not. Well, I see one square through on number 8 down there. and I've got a heads promenade 3/4, but that ain't promenade half. See, that's promenade 3/4.
It counts.
8 counts.
No, it's good. It works.
It
works.
counts. Or
It
so,
counts.
I thought you said 8 counts.
It'll count.
It'll count. All right.
Count.
And we've got the reason that I feel that callers use those 2 calls so very much is because it is prevalent with those who record singing calls. And you newer callers, that's really all you know unless somebody helps you or tells you something different. We acquired 20 45 RPM vinyls the other day, and Deborah and I were listening to them. The first 10, every one of them started with head square through 4. And we've gotten really in a rut or a groove of using grand square in the opener, middle break, and the closer. 8 of them had grand square in it. Grand square and square through. And may as well just buy one because you didn't need all the rest of them just alike. You know. And I don't understand that. I feel like that we're being lazy in writing our modules for our singing calls. And I think we're not doing justice to you newer callers of giving you the same thing over and over and over again. Now, in our area, each year we have it's the only contest in square dancing that we have in our area, but every year we have an annual singing call or round dance of the year contest. The only prize is they get their name mentioned. That's it. But the dancers vote for what singing call they like best and who sang it. And so we have that dance. And each year until this year, Vernon started it about 10 years ago. And I'm president of the Callers Association last year and again this year. So it has been up until this year that the favorite singing call and round dance were the last 2 that were done in the evening. And everybody waited to see what it was. Well, I changed the rule this year. I said, nobody's going to know but me who the winner is or who the favorite is. I don't like the winner, but the favorite. And I took all the singing calls and all the round dances, and I put them in a bucket, and I drew them out one at a time, and that was the order that they were presented at the dance. And so nobody knew where what was. But sadly to me, the first 4 singing call figures started with head square through 4, one right behind the other. And 3 of them had grand square in it. And see, I teach where you have multiple callers on a program, pay attention to what was done before you and do something different. Don't do the same thing. So many callers don't do that. They're going to do their thing. It don't make any difference. If Jesus Christ called right before them, they're going to go right ahead with whatever they had in their mind. And it's so easy to adapt to something different. It's really, really, it's simple.
Let me ask you this, if I could, John, and everybody. Have you checkered out the singing call sequences? Have you traced or tracked in your mind where those dancers are going? If not, do that. Because if you were to have a really good sequence, all of the choreography is going to time out, and the anchored dancer is going to come home at the end of that 64-beat phrase, and without stopping, moving into the next figure. If you have stoppage at home, the anchored dancer gets home with their partners or whichever person relationship in the square, and they have to stand there for more than 4 beats, it's too long. Because if they stand at that anchored spot for the next sequence to start, and the commands out of your mouth are, hey now those heads, hey now those heads, and it's going to take, hey now those heads, how many beats more before they move to get to the, so now not just are they standing there for 4 beats, but almost upwards to 8 or 12 beats because of the delivery that you're giving. So just track those dancers and where they are and where the swing occurs matters. If you were to track the quadrant of a square, and if you as the caller standpoint are looking at the square, and all you all are up here are looking this direction, so I'm the caller and John's all the dancers. And so we have couple number 1 here and 2 and 3 and 4 all the way around. And if you were looking, you're standing on the south quadrant of the square, and the north quadrant is furthest from you. And then you have the east and west. And so if I swing my corner, and the optimal place is to swing is in that southwest quadrant, we know it's a 16-beat promenade all the way to get back to home. But I don't, for the life of me, understand why anybody's going to swing up here in the northeast quadrant or directly up north, and then they have how far? An 8-beat promenade to home. They stand there for 8 beats, waiting for something else to do, and then 4 beats because the delay in delivering the next sequence. So 12 beats, they're standing there doing nothing. So to me, that figure should be rewritten. If you're going to rewrite, or if you're writing sequences, it matters where that contact progression happens. If I'm going to swing the corner, I want to swing her in that south or southwest corner of the quadrant of the square so I can get a full promenade all the way around the ring. And anything less or more than that becomes a problem. So just be aware when you're tracking or tracing these figures and sequences, trace them in your head. Where's the swing occur? If I'm in the southwest quadrant of the square, and if I call an 8-chain 4, where's the swing going to occur? Northeast. And then I've got that same problem. Relay the deuces, flip-flop the square, same thing. Track 2s, flip-flop the square. So if you want that swing to occur in the proper place, you have to flip-flop the square first and then call those 8-chain 4s or relay the deuces so that swing occurs in the right positioning. And to me, that's where you're going to have a proper singing call where nobody is stopping. The flow is continuous. You'll go right into the next call. And you can lead call, just like you would the sides, face, grand, square. And now those heads are right and left through. And they get on the first beat command to get started, and they have the full 64-beat phrase to execute those calls. So something to think about when you're working the figures. Please checker them out. See if they work.
Exactly what Tim was saying, and we see too many recordings that have a 16-beat tagline on the singing call and an 8-beat promenade because it started halfway across. We call it half-stirred. It's very, very easy to half-stir a square, and if the caller's not aware of it or paying any attention, he's up there singing like crazy, and the dancer's saying, oh, come on, man, call something, I'm standing here waiting on you. Now, when I learned to dance, what Tim was talking about of having the 8-beat promenade was quite prevalent in our dancing. But you know what? We were taught when you get home, the tagline of the singing call is going. If you're any kind of a singer or anything of that nature, and you know that you've got time at home, so you swing your partner at home. You can tell dancers this day and time, so many of them see swing and they just...
They do a left star through and twirl out.
Yeah, or the man takes a half a step and cranks a woman around like a coffee grinder. Yeah. And then she's got on a badge that said, please don't swing me. Because she thinks that thing is a swing over here, and that's a coffee grinder twirl, and they haven't really learned how to swing. Oh, we spend a lot of time teaching people how to swing in our class, and Deborah and I swing with them to find out if they swing right or don't, or how to help them do everything. You got to do everything. People don't know nothing coming into this activity. And if you as a caller don't teach them, they ain't going to learn. I think I got off the subject. But
No. When we're talking about figures, too, the same thing happens with openers and middle breaks and closers. How about a grand square opener, and then it's Alaman left and weave, because that's what the cue sheets, that's what everybody does, and they want to sing some more. Where does it leave them? It leaves them
across.
on the opposite side. The promenade's 8 beats. They're sitting there at home for 12 beats going, now what? So how do you fix that? What could be done instead of the Alaman left and weave? We could circle left and sing the singing thing, sing the words, and keep singing until they get back home. Or you can do a 4 girls promenade. Come back
but
swing.
I don't get to sing all them beautiful lyrics
Well,
and
there's-
everything.
there's-
The 4
there's-
girls promenade. I could have them circling left and then be singing.
I know, but you got to sing during a grand square. So.
Oh, there's a difference.
Unless you're doing Rockin' to Rosalie's Boat in the middle break. Don't want to sing over that.
They didn't write any lyrics for that segment. Thanks to Jerry Haig. These kinds of things you need to be aware of, though, and that's what we teach in our caller school. Every little bitty dinky thing that we can think of that callers need to know. And because if we don't teach it, they're not going to know it. It'll take too long to learn it. Thank God I had some good mentors in my area. And one was 6'6" and a big booming voice. Oh, if you've been around long enough, his name was Ray Smith. He'd just reach over, John, come here. And he'd give me a lesson. Or I'd go to his dance and I'd get up and guest call something, and the dancers didn't get through a darn thing of it, either my patter or my singing call either. And he'd get up and do the exact same thing right behind me, and no problem. It was the delivery and the way it was put together, and the trust that the dancers had in him. So, man, I studied, I researched everything I could get from anybody that I knew was good. Now, I didn't go to a caller that could only attract 1 square. I went to those callers that had a hall full of dancers, because they were the ones that were doing the stuff that was right. At least I felt like it was. And then I researched everything I could from any and everybody. But
earlier, John made a comment about taking a particular song and being able to interchange a sequence from different choices or selections and taking it and trying it out or testing it out with a song that he has in his head that he knows. And his was Because, Just Because. And so that heads, the old chaparral figure, heads promenade halfway, come down the middle and square through 4, right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, square through 3. Swing. All right. And if you can fit that into a piece of music, you know that the piece of music is going to be phrased pretty well too. Because sometimes the phrasing of the song inhibits how or what choreography that we can use, because it doesn't seem to fit the feel of the music. And then we have the sequences that we want to have right to fit that type and to test it out. Just as John said earlier, is pick one. For you, it might not be because. It might be Rosalie's Boat, or it might be Rock This Town, or whatever it is that you have, one that you're really, really familiar with. And when you see a different sequence, or if you're writing a sequence, test it out. See if it'll fit in that. And don't do it on the fly at a dance. That's the worst place to do it. You know, you test it out and push the checkers, figure it out, and then you're going to take it. Don't just cold do it, or don't dance it cold at an event. And so we go.
And if you have a problem or you need to work out something, then invite a square of dancers to come to your house or dance in your garage. Or if you don't have a garage, find somebody that does and get a square of dancers in there and practice what you need. You know, you don't want that old cliche, you only get one chance to make a first impression. And if it ain't good, it'll haunt you forever. So be good the first time you get out in public. Jay?
Jay King from Arkansas. All of the calls have a specified number of beats to execute. Do we make any allowances for the chronologically gifted?
Define what you're talking about.
For the old folks.
Well, why didn't you say that? Well, you looked at me when you said that.
The word is mature.
Yeah, yeah. I'm an old folk. I'm 80 years old, and I don't mind admitting it. I don't care who knows it. I was just going to say that about what Tim was saying about that standard Ferris wheel figure that he just quoted, which fits any 64-beat piece of music. There was one before that that was used over and over and over again, and I think Wade Driver was the first one to record it, of head square through 4, do-si-do, swing through, spin the top, right and left through, and square through 3, and swing the corner. You can't believe the number of callers that are still recording that very identical thing, and our seniors, our double senior citizens, can't keep up with it. I'll give $100 to anybody that can get a group of seniors to dance that whole thing, because they just can't do it. And they're still promenading whenever they get into the next figure over there because, adjust it, adapt it, leave out the do-si-do. You eliminate 6 beats when you do that, and that's just about makes it right for it to fit. So that's the kind of thing that we're up against, and we have to be able to adapt to it, not force feed these things off on somebody just because that's what we want to do. Look at figure number 4 that I have on the singing call figures that I gave you. If you look at the beginning, it has a title there. It says, "Let Me Be There." And that's the name of the song that Vernon and I recorded it to. I was over in Saudi Arabia calling, and on the way home, and Doug Bennett told me, he said, "I got this piece of music that I want you and Vernon to call the singing call to, Let Me Be There." And so we had listened to it. I came home for a week, and I called Vernon, and I said, "Here's what I want you to use to start with." I had heard a caller, I think it was Al Stevens over in Germany, use this of head ladies turn through, star through, and the heads promenade half. And I said, that's the opener that I want to start the figure with. Well, I left after a week, and I went to Australia and New Zealand for a month. And I came back through, and he said, "This is what I've got." And he showed it to me, and I said, "I like it." And we went in the studio and recorded it. And I guarantee you it works. It's a beautiful figure, and it works really good. But everybody says, "Oh, my God, if I said head ladies turn through and star through, the whole floor would break down." Whose fault is it? Look in the mirror. It's that person's fault if they can't dance what you're going to call in your singing call. And if they don't know how to do it, guess what? Workshop it in your figure, in your pattern. Teach them or show them how to, if they've never heard of that before, and most dancers across the United States ain't never seen that before. Deborah and I use it all the time. How the head ladies turn through, back to your partner, star through. We don't use turn through enough. That's why they don't know how to do it. But all you got to do is show it to them, and I guarantee you it'll work, and it'll fit every one of those figures that we have. Now, I wanted to say on this sheet of paper where it has opener, singing call, opening calls, not square through nor promenade half. And most of these were given to me last year by Jim Mayo. He emailed it to me after he got back home. And most of them I used, but you just notice there's some whole different beginnings in there of singing call figures that is not head square through or head promenade half.
And if you're a modular caller, these are setups, what
Right.
we would call the setup, to get them into a corner box. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like you said corner box. Thank you very much.
What?
New terminology. New phaser terminology.
That's what they use at the caller school.
Ken was using the corner box. It ain't a zero box anymore.
But is this exhaustive? I mean, there's so many you can dream up. And be creative. And the dancers today, I've gone into different regions and called for a lot of people, and if I don't say head square through, the square breaks down for a figure of a singing call. If I say heads flutter wheel, they'll stand there and go and stunned because I didn't say head square through. Or let alone a reverse flutter wheel. If you're going to pull out a head lady's turn through, you're going to see deer and headlight looks all over the place. So again, workshop the material, get them used to something different, and don't let them fail. You got to kind of do it sparingly, like a spice.
Jim Duncan from North Carolina. What both of you are saying is extremely important of watching the floor and knowing the call, because if you go the first time and you go the do-si-do 8-chain-4, and they're not even close with older dancers, you've got to be able on the fly to pick that up somewhere.
And if you go ahead and do it and they get back and you're already started into the second sequence of the heads, whatever they're going to do, if you're watching the floor, sometimes you can adapt that and get them back by the middle break. But if you're just reading it and they're not even close, then you've got some issues, especially by the middle break.
Correct.
That was Jim Duncan from Otto, North Carolina.
All right. And my contention is that you probably should have known that before you called it. If you've been observing the floor, unless you're just a guest caller that happened to walk up and do a guest tip or something of that nature, it may make a little bit of difference. But if you're the caller for the evening, you ought to know by the time you finished your first patter call whether they're going to be able to keep up or not with some of the figures that you're going to use. Judge the floor.
On the next to the last page on my handout, I guess it's the last page, but it's on the front side of it, on the bottom paragraph. I have something here. It was occasionally you'll find a sequence that doesn't flow well, it doesn't phrase well, it doesn't time well, such as something like this. And this was from an actual singing call that was released. Head star through, pass through, star through, pass through, couples hinge. Half tag, all 8 circulate, boys run, do an 8-chain 5, swing your corner and your promenade. Okay? Something like that doesn't really phrase well, doesn't fit too well to a lot of the music we have. Probably, I know it doesn't even flow well very good with the couples hinge and all of those things. Probably can't get folks through it. Hey, don't even bother trying to find a repair for it. Just replace it totally. There's nothing to fix there because it's broken. Okay? But somebody thought that in a studio and thought, well, let's just do that. And being a recording artist, I can tell you that a lot of times we get the tune one day and we go into studio the next to put the figure on it. And we're doing it in our heads, and our heads sometimes aren't as well timed as what happens on the real floor. So they are sometimes very tight, or the phrasing's tight. There's several recordings where, and even I have recorded, where I have to say, head square through, 4 hands round, you know, ho, relay the deucey. And, well, they're not finished with the square through, but the music had to go, rump, dum, 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 and then they were already starting. But if dancers aren't well adapt to stacking of calls, then they're not going to even remember what the second call is while they're attempting the first.
And the age of our dancers has a big effect on that. We used to could stack calls. We could give 2 or 3 calls in a row, and you don't rush it. You continue on dancing, and you dance. But some of it, the older we get, the less we can remember. What was that second thing I was going to do? And it's like getting up out of your chair and you start down the hall and where am I supposed to be going? What did I come down this way for? And it gets worse. See what you have to look forward to. But be kind to your dancers, but don't be so flipping repetitious that it gets extremely boring to them. And you'll hear me make this comment. I've made it before and I'll make it again. I've heard dancers at the National Convention where the live band is, they're all singing calls in that hall. Caller after caller after caller calling the same thing over and over, constantly in there. And dancers walk out and say, God, why do we have to dance the same figures all the time? Years ago, it was an unwritten rule that you did not dare write a singing call figure and record it that copied somebody else's figure. You had to write one that was different in some regard. Because I can remember the first caller's clinic that I ever went to in our area over in Dallas was with Ed Gilmore from California. And he would give us a figure and ask us what tune that went to. What song did that figure go to? It was a good quiz, and most of us knew the answers to it. Then he said, well, let me show you how I can switch some of these figures. Well, I think that was the beginning of switching some of this stuff around.
Well, some of those, it was sacrilege to change.
You didn't dare change
Don't
some of them.
change Summer Sounds. Don't change El Paso City.
Right. Let's say, what's that one that Dick Jones recorded? It's it's a basic dance, dances like a C4. Running Bear. You don't dare change the Running Bear figure. And Dick Jones wrote that sucker, and man, I'll tell you what. Now, I've never seen anybody dance it all the way through the first time ever. And it's a basic call. So those kinds of things you did. It's sacrilegious to screw one of those. Hey, lolly, lolly. You don't mess up it too much. You can do a little bit, but not a whole lot. So those are the kind of things that new callers need to learn. Or even experienced callers, if you're doing some of this stuff and your repetition with it, change. I'm too old. I'm too set in my ways to change. Well, baloney.
Yeah.
I don't buy that.
What could be done right can be done left. If you have that same figure, head square through four hands and do-si-do or swing through and the boy run and Ferris wheel and a pass through and touch a quarter, scoot back, do everything left. Heads left square through, four hands around, do a left do-si-do, left touch a quarter, scoot back, leaders run. But you can do those. You could do the left swing throughs and the girls run and a Ferris wheel and a pass through, and you have to train the dancers ahead of time. And we know that, well, it'll mess them up. Well, maybe, but you're going to have to train these dancers a lot better.
And then the caller says, okay, stop, and let's walk it. We used to do that a lot. The first time, well, not the first time, but one of the early times that I saw an 8-chain through, I had been dancing for a little while and was learning to call, but I didn't really know the 8-chain through, but I learned it. And then we were at a weekend thing with multiple callers there, and this one caller got up, and he workshopped the 8-chain through to the singing call North to Alaska. Well, we had a square. In those days, we rigged squares, and we played all kinds of jokes on the callers or pranks or whatever we could think of, and we were young, and we could do anything. And we workshopped that sucker and danced it just like he's supposed to, and he started calling. When he got to the figure part, we did a grand square. We was right in front of him. He stopped and he said, all right, let's walk it. We got through and we walked through it and went all the way through it. Okay, we're going to start. And he put it back on and we did a grand square in the figure again. He said, all right, we're going to walk it one more time. It was the third time before he finally figured out we was messing with him, But we used to have lots of fun and games in our earlier days of dancing. Heckling the caller, we called it. And nowadays, I've never been messed up but once while I was calling because I ignored whatever might be going on around me, and I would look beyond it. But I was calling a dance one night, and I was on the floor level with the dancers, and it was at my regular club in Arlington, and there was a couple that had moved into our area from up north, and she was very obese. And she was a good dancer, very light on her feet, and dancer, and got into a promenade, and they were cutting up and messing up and all this bit, and I wasn't paying any attention to them. And she started on the promenade and got right in front of me and just broke out of the square and did a bump and grind right in front of me. Right there. I said, Lord of mercy, I lost it. So that don't happen very often.
How many of you all have a copy or have print or have available to you the timing charts? Okay, they're your best friend in this game. Being able to take those, have them over here and on your desk or whatever when you're working with the checkers or pushing your dolls, whatever you have, and you're going through these sequences and stick with them. Now, is that an exact science? No, but it's pretty darn good. It's a great baseline to go from. And we know from a squared set, it's going to take 2 more beats of music to execute whatever it is you call to initiate those calls because they're further away, yes, than close couples. So just be aware that when you're writing these, track them. Make a list. Add them all up. It's going to take about 48 beats of music for you to get a sequence that will do a corner progression. You know, we used to do right-hand lady progressions too. But any progression you want to do, and then you have the taglines that you want to sing. That doesn't leave you with a lot of calls, does it? And those that think they can sight call these routines, well, that's a skill that they've really had to hone in and develop on, because they need to see that corner relationship before they get started, call the one that they want to do, and then quickly make it happen so they can get back to that spot, that quadrant of the square where the swing is appropriate. That's a whole lot of doing in 48 beats of music. There are calls that are more difficult to utilize in singing calls. Spin chain the gears, for that matter. Okay, where it just as progresses you around the room. How many know where a spin chain the gears ends after you start it? Do you know? Push the checkers. See what quadrant of the square you want to be in to start the spin chain the gears, that where it's going to end, and then if you're in the right quadrant to swing and what have you to get out of it. So checker it out, use it, and you can come up with these things as long as you have that timing chart available. Okay? Use it.
I agree. The timing chart is very important, and everybody ought to have one and use the heck out of it. Look at number 9 in the figures that I gave you. You want to adapt your singing call or rethink your singing call? Guarantee you that'll work. And I'll bet you nearly every dancer on the floor will dance it if they've been dancing any length of time at all. If they know how to do a split two, split the ring. If they don't, guess whose fault it is? Look in the mirror. Yeah, and that'll work and put you in a corner box when you get done with it. Look at number 11. That's a right-hand lady progression. Vernon and Deborah and I recorded that song as a trio, and we three wrote the figure to it. And it's a right-hand lady progression because you notice it does not say swing the corner. It says swing this girl, and it's the right-hand lady. And when it got published in American Square Dance magazine, it had swing the corner and promenade, and I just exploded. I went up in smoke, and I made a telephone call, and I unloaded. And they said, oh, well, we thought maybe you'd made a misprint. And I said, then you ought to get your checkers and your dolls out and work the darn figure. You know, we had it, a correction came out the following month, but that's usually too late by the time that happens. And so these figures work. I guarantee you that they work, and you can adapt them, or you can adjust them, or you can make some changes to them, whatever you want to. Just put more variety into your singing calls.
Vic Cedar's website has a bunch of things that people load onto that site. And there's a lot of material on it, and some of them are the singing call sequences that you offer. But even those, you want to checker them, just don't take them verbatim and think that they're going to work. Some of the cue sheets have misprints on them. I know because it's happened to me. I get the record I just recorded and cut, and it comes back, and you read the cue sheet, and it doesn't work because they left a pass-through out when they were typing up the calls. And there's nothing you need to do. That's gone to press. It's out. So that's a problem. Another thing that you want to be aware of, and I like music that has a really strong musical phrase, because I want to know where the next one starts and where it's going to end. And a lot of times, a good piece of music has these fiddles or something or a lead instrument that changes, and there's followed by a chase of something else. And then that chase will take up the next part and be the lead instrument, and there'll be a different thing that will follow it or chase it. And if you are really familiar with your singing calls, you get the feel of where I need to be swinging and where I need to be singing. And so it's important to know that musical phrase. If it doesn't have a good phrasing to it, it's probably not going to be a really good danceable singing call. If you listen to it all in one sitting, and if you can't figure out if I'm in figure one now or if I'm in the middle break or where are you in this singing call, it more than likely isn't going to be a very nice danceable piece of music, because you can get lost in a hurry not knowing where you're at. There's several round dances that are written that are that way, and the cuers will tell you, boy, I don't want to get lost because I can never figure out where the A and the B is. Okay, that happens to square dancing too, so just be aware of that. Get a good piece of music.
And listen to it until it drives your wife crazy, or your husband, or whoever it might happen to be, or if you live with somebody. If you don't keep listening to it, it drives you your own self crazy. Or you can hum it and do everything that needs to be done with it, and you know exactly what every part of it is, what the lead instrument is and what's not, what's left out. How do you put this thing together? How do you make it fit? Like Tim said, you know, nobody is infallible, except I know one caller that I've known him for a long time, and he's the only one that I know of that ain't never made a mistake as long as I was dancing to him. Now, he may have somewhere else, but I don't know about it. But golly, yeah, we're human beings. We make mistakes, or we forget a word or skip a line or something of that nature. You have to be able to adjust to it.
Forget to call that movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, you forget to call. All right. Now don't think these are the only singing calls that I used in that paper. I ain't gonna give y'all all of my good stuff. I give you some of it, but I ain't gonna give it all to you.
One other question that's asked a lot is, how often should we change a sequence or a figure in a singing call? And really there isn't a rule of thumb that says, oh, once or twice or three times or at all. It really matters on what your emphasis is during that programming of the dance. I mean, we puzzle them enough through the choreography. Do we have to really add more layers of puzzle where we're doing the singing part of it, which is supposed to be kind of smooth dancing and wind in your face and them having fun with the song and getting to relate to a personal piece of music somehow? And the idea here is, if we were to change it and just try to come up with the most difficult sequences that you would come up and think of, then we're just puzzling them again. Why don't I just do two patters instead of having to do another singer? Just be aware that we puzzle them enough. And sometimes the singing calls is the place to relax them and just let them dance and get that feel of wind in the music and face wind in their face while they dance and just enjoying it. And so it might not be you change it at all. You find one that fits that piece of music and everybody's doing well with it. You say you don't have to adapt it. You don't have to make any changes. Might be you want to change it for the opener, for the first two figures, and maybe you'll change it for the next two figures. I've often also seen people, we're not married to, we have to have heads, sides. You could do head, sides, heads. You can change it that way if you're looking for some different.
And make sure you do it in the sequence that he just said, or you're going to work the same ladies every time.
All the time through.
Yeah, you got
now, this is good to know, though, John, because, and I know you're probably aware, but what he just said was, if you have somebody that has diminished abilities and you don't want them to be the anchor dancers moving all the time, then you can put a pattern of sequence together that they're not the ones moving all the time. And knowing where they're at in the square, then I can do sides, heads, sides, and they haven't had to dance a lot. Or head, sides, heads, and they haven't had to dance a lot. They're not the ones doing all the heads promenade in the square through. And so just be aware of that.
For you newer callers, what Tim's saying, if you do head, sides, the head ladies are the only ladies that get to work. Side ladies saying, well, where's my turn? And this was mentioned in the Board of Governors meeting yesterday, and it was nice to hear Patty Green held up her hand, and she said, I'm a same figure caller on my singing calls 4 times through. And she says she's been getting a lot of compliments about doing that. there are times that I will do that to a singing call, and dancers that have been dancing for a long time, they say, it was really nice just to be able to relax and dance the figures all the way through without having to think that you were going to change it. So sometimes it works. And we don't have to change everything. Then there's other times say, boy, I really liked it. You called 4 different figures to that singing call, man. Hot Rod Harry, you know. We'd like to hear some comments or questions from you guys, okay? Would you please?
Remember to state your name and where you're from, please, for the tape.
Jim Duncan, Otto, North Carolina. Just quickly, I guess it's our problem and the dancer's problem. Grand Square and Teacup Chain have the same number of beats, but rarely do you see dancers that finish the Teacup Chain, especially on a beginning singing call. And you need to do that call, but if you do it in the break, rarely do they finish in 32 beats. Any suggestions of what you all do when you use that?
You bet. Come down to Deborah's class and watch our dancers. I guarantee you they can do Teacup Chain in 32 beats. Now, we just did a plus class, just finished it, and they danced Teacup Chain in 32 beats because we counted it for them all the way through until they could get right on it and hit it right on the money. And it's called counter dancing with each other, and how to hold hands and how to make sure you give the counter dancing to each other. If you have a limber dish rag, it's going to take 40. Yeah, but if you do the counter dancing like it should be done and everybody turns like they ought to, and you can't, we had 6 squares on the floor, and whenever they hit 32 beats, the entire floor erupted in cheer. You know, man, they hit it right on the money. And we do every single call that way. Every single call that they learn it in the correct number of beats that it takes to do it, and we count every one of them for them. And if they mess up a grand square, they may get bonged on the head with the microphone. You know, don't you dare do that. You don't mess up the stuff. We'll play with you somewhere else, but don't be messing up the grand square and do the Teacup Chain in 32 beats. Relay the Deuce is the same way. Every call that we teach them the number of beats that it takes to do it, and they love it. They can hit it right on the money. Jay, you had a comment.
Just one point on that too, Jim, is it might be then the following up choreography, all you have a time for is Alaman Left and Promenade to adjust. If you're watching, then you see it.
Now, if you're guest calling somewhere, don't be chewing them out and fussing at them or nothing like that. You ain't going to go back.
Jay King from Arkansas. Is it mandatory that all singing calls end with swing and promenade?
Of course not. Absolutely not.
16 beats to Promenade Home. Also, there's 16 beats in a Do Paso, so you could.
If you look at number 4 right there, it says chain down the line and keep her in promenade. It ain't got a swing in it. Now, Jay is a fan of Do Paso. He's my buddy. And I love Do Paso. You know why? Because it was named for El Paso, Texas. And I don't give a flip what program we adopt in Texas as long as they do keep Do Paso on the list. We're going to do it if CERC goes to $1 a sop. You know, because Do Paso is tied to Texas same way Alamo style is. And so Jay and I have exchanged a lot of Do Paso choreography between the two, and he's got some really good stuff. If you want some Do Paso material, check with Jay King. Tom?
Tom Miller, Pennsylvania. Just asking John and Tim what their thoughts are. 2 questions. The first question is your thoughts about workshop material, adding it to the singing call. Second question being a lot of the singing calls that has been done in the last several months, years, they sing the lyrics all the way through instead of doing the figure, whether it's a swing, do-si-do. So just some of your thoughts on those 2 questions.
You're talking about at the end of a promenade or end of a right and a left grand. I'm sorry, end of a right and a
like
left grand or
weave the
ring.
You sing all the lyrics.
You see, it has happened time and time again for you newer callers. A lot of these recording artists, they love to hear their voices. And so they will sing all the way through the do-si-do or the swing and expect the dancers to do it anyway. You can't expect them to do anything. You can expect them to screw up the figure or something like that, but you can't expect them to do what you're thinking. if you don't tell them ahead of time, I'm going to sing through it, but I want you to do it anyway, then they may do that. You can expect whatever, but they don't mean they're going to do it. That's right. Thank you, Vance. Appreciate that. But I think we have gone too far with it, Tom, in my opinion, that are leaving it out and not telling the dancers to either do-si-do or swing and promenade. That's my feeling. I think we pushed it too far. I prefer to say swing. If Deborah and I are calling together, one of us will say it. We might not on the last ending, but we've told them ahead of time, we want them to swing anyway.
And as far as the workshop material goes, I, for one, want them to dance that material in a singing call because it helps, as John said earlier, with the timing, the sense, are they doing it to the music? Are we able to achieve it in the proper amount of time? And if you're able to use a figure, same time, 4 times that offers that into it, or just a slight variation, I think it's terrific to be able to do that. Again, it depends on the calls that are being workshopped. Some of them just don't lend into the singing calls quite so much, like a spin chain, the gears. They're tough. And if you're going to do that, you have to rewrite something for that. And I've got one little bugaboo that I want to just touch upon before we move on to other questions, is how many do-si-dos do you dance in an evening? One dance. On average, how many do-si-dos? Have you ever counted them? There's over 104 do-si-dos being delivered on an average. Well, think about it. How many singing calls have do-si-do in all the figures? Many of them. So if you're doing that 7 times however many singing calls you're doing in a night, if it's 9 or 7, that's a lot. It adds up. And then if you're doing it in the patter part of it as well, that's a lot of do-si-dos. And in my opinion, that's one of the reasons why they're trying to modify it to do something different. They're trying that Hungarian swing or whatever it is they're doing. Or the little stepty do-si could hit the Susie Q's with the feet doing or whatever they're doing. And the idea is maybe you have to start eliminating a few of those, and use them where they're danceable. And maybe instead of a do-si-do, use the swing and promenade instead of a do-si-do and promenade. Anytime someone's backing up, there's a chance they're going to trip over somebody else's footwork. So just be aware of that and maybe eliminate some of those out of the singing calls. Just be aware.
I did a seminar one time in another state in a big town and had 15 callers at the seminar, and I was to call a Saturday night dance and finish up on Sunday morning. And I told the callers in there to tell me Sunday morning, it was a mainstream dance, tell me Sunday morning what call in the mainstream program I did not use. There was only one caller that knew that I didn't call a single do-si-do all evening. The rest of them, we didn't pay any attention. I said, well, that's the problem. We got to pay attention to what's going on. You got to have your mind in the game. And I have called several dances and asked the dancers to swing at the end of a weave the ring or right and left ground in a singing call in promenade, and they won't do it. They'll just take their partner in promenade. And if I'm dancing in front of them and I'm swinging and they're trying to crawl up my rear end back here, that really irritates me. If you're not going to swing, stand still for 6 beats and then you start your promenade. But don't push me if I've got somebody that likes to swing. There ain't nothing like swinging with a good swinger, no matter where you go or what you do. Now, because they won't do a swing and promenade, then I will call a do-si-do. And guess what they do? A Hungarian swing. Yeah. So I get to see them swing anyway, because they don't do a do-si-do right. But if I call a do-si-do, I say, don't touch do-si-do, because I want to see what it looks like. I'll try to make a game out of it a little bit. Any question, comment? Come on, somebody.
Bo Byerly from
you.
North Carolina. There's a trend I've noticed on some of the newer singing calls being released, And it's where they would use a grand square and then an Alaman left and weave. Then they'll continue singing lyrics, completely leaving out the swing and promenade home. And I'm wondering what kind of opinions we have on that. I don't like it.
That's what we were just talking about with Tom. That's the question that Tom asked also. You know, I think we have taken it too far.
Rich Tobin, Woburn, Mass. Tim, you mentioned earlier about where they should be doing a swing before they promenade home and that kind of thing. Now, I'm hoping that I don't misremember what you said, but I was also assuming that it was couple number one that you were triangulating from. When you said that you try to do the swing in the south west corner, that's just a couple of steps before their home position, so you're assuming that it's going to go another full turn around. Unfortunately, sometimes we have dancers that don't understand that square dancing is also an exercise, and that they should take a walk around the floor. So, okay, I've already answered my question because I could see your bobbing of your head, because I was always thinking that if I was going to swing him, I was going to swing him in the southeast corner, in order to get as much of a because they generally won't back up unless they're really obstinate.
Answer that. Oftentimes, you'll see people do a progressive swing. They'll do a swing, and then they kind of move as they're rolling into that south quadrant of the square, which is what you really want. You want that swing to occur. If they want to move as it kind of progresses, they roll out into the promenade, and they just kind of morph into that 16 beat. Now, on occasion, you'll see people stop. And when I have folks that do that, and I kind of watch them, I just kind of watch them. Next time they do it, I just stop singing. I won't sing for 16 beats. They look at me and say, "You're not dancing. I'm not going to waste my time singing." So, yeah, there's ways that they get the point, okay? But we have to train the dancers. We have to educate the dancers. And that means that, hey, if you're going to do an Alaman left in the northeast quadrant or northwest quadrant, you're going to promenade short home. I'm all for that. If you're going to do it in the west part, I'm okay for a little quarter promenade. That's fine. If I'm going to swing or Alaman left in that southwest quadrant, I expect to promenade all the way around the ring, though, okay? Especially in a singing call.
And go ahead. And that the swing, as Tim said, should not be right on the spot. It should be a progressive, a moving swing, and you never twirl a lady if she has something else to do after the twirl other than with you. If you swing her, she becomes your partner. But if the call happened to be in the old days, swing your corner, Alaman left a new corner, come back and promenade, then don't you dare be coffee grinding that lady in a twirl, because she's supposed to do Alaman left to the next guy up there. But if she has nothing else to do but dance with you in a promenade, so to speak, you swing the corner and walk out into a twirl, and you're 5 or 6 steps away from where you started the swing, if you've been taught correctly, or if you're teaching your dancers correctly how to do that. And it should be done.
Mike Oliveri, Colorado. Along Tim's idea of short, what I'll do is if they do that 2 or 3 times, the third time it comes around to the figure, I'll say, swing your partner, promenade short. And then they'll stop. And they'll laugh. And then next time they'll go. John, question for you, Tim, for you. You do something unique choreography that you want to do in the singing call. You said you workshop it. How many times do you attempt to workshop it and figure out that maybe some of the older dancers just aren't getting it? When do you give up, or do you?
Yeah, there's a time you have to give up, because if they can't do it, they just ain't going to do it. You know, it don't make a difference what you do if they can't handle it. But most of the time I've been able to get them to, I may use it 2 or 3 pattern tips before I do that singing call on the 3rd or 4th tip to make sure that they are able to dance that figure. It's just like this turn through to a star through and promenade halfway around. If I haven't done that enough for them to really know what that sucker is, they're going to mess it up. Because they just haven't had enough experience at doing it. But try to make sure that they get that experience. And we have, to follow through on what you just said about short, Deborah has a couple in her club that have been dancing for a long time, and he loves to say, short, and get the whole square to stop. Well, we're training those other dancers in the square. Just bypass him and go on around him, let him stand there.
That's right.
And if we catch him, if he's close enough doing it, his name's Mike. You have to watch them mics, Mike. Is it Mike Promenade? If I didn't want you to promenade, I wouldn't have called it.
Right. Another thing is, if that's a featured workshop item that I'm doing, I might workshop that progressively through the whole night of a dance and not use it in a sequence of a singing call till a little later. Right. And maybe not just that next tip. I'm going to do it along that line that way. So that's and maybe I can't. Maybe they didn't accomplish it as well as I wanted. Well, I'll hold it for the next dance maybe and see if I can't. Let's do it again. But you have to set goals. If you're not talking to your club leaders and you haven't set goals and say, by the end of the year, I want our group to be able to be proficient at left square through and be able to do it in singing calls and dance it in a timely manner. You have to set these goals. If you don't set goals, then you're just floundering or more apt just to do nothing. So we're kind of, any more questions or comments? Because we got to wrap things up before we head out of here. One more?
Somebody? Mike?
Mike Oliveri, Colorado again. Being the professional, national, international traveler callers that you are, we had a big-name caller come to Colorado recently, and I got to go to 2 of his dances. The dances were identical. Should be able to mix them up, right? The figures that he used, the songs that he used. I mean, you could take one dance and transplant it into the other one.
Well, I'll use us as an example. You've been to several of our dances that we come up in your area, Karen, and I guarantee you every one of them's different.
It's a little off topic, but yeah, it is. It's just a matter of how you want to do it. There used to be people who had entire dances memorized, and they go from place to place, and that they just do the exact same dance, same jokes, same singing calls from room to room. But that's just a matter of preference, I suppose. But as far as singing calls go, were they pretty good? Did people enjoy them? That whole new crowd might not have heard of. You heard them because you were traveling. But for that group there that night, it might have been just fine. So what we're hoping that we can do here today is plant the seeds. And you people, right now, everybody in this room is going to set forth to make a difference, that we're going to facilitate some change. And that means get out there and come up with some various figures and use them appropriately, not abuse the dancer or anything like that, but train the people and be the leaders in your area again, and go back to your associations and say, hey, we need to be aware that we're overusing square through, that we're overusing promenade halfway. And then teach them, train them how to make these adjustments. Sometimes we have to do these on the fly. Again, you have the dancers with diminished abilities. And I can't just stand there and read that thing 4 times and see them fail every time. It doesn't work. Okay? So anything you want to say, John,
also,
to wrap it up?
These handouts that we have given you, that's not toilet paper. They're given to you to use. Take it and use it, adapt it, work it, do whatever you need to do, but educate yourself with this material. And we hope that we've given you some things that you can use in the future. Okay?
Let's give John a nice hand for being
Kim,
here. We appreciate it. Thank you all
very
for being
much.
here.
Oh, the theme of our convention, agents of change. If you're not willing to change, you're dragging your feet. Okay, thank you.